Ja? Zou je even naast me willen staan?
Oh.
Met een microfoontje.
Ja. Hoezo?
Welcome everybody to our next inspirational session. This time on AR and data visualization. We are happy to have Sebastian Veldman and Michiel Ebeling with us. They both work for Mobgen. So I would like to invite you to maybe tell a little bit more about yourself. Yeah. And then surprise us, because I really don't know what you really curious about the content. So
cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Well, my name is Michiel Ebeling. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at Mobgen Accenture Interactive. Mobgen was founded 10 years ago. We specialize in digital and mobile solutions, and we have been acquired almost 2 years ago. This summer, next summer, 2 years ago. It's already summer outside. By Accenture. So we now offer combined services with digital marketing and customer service together with Accenture Interactive and digital marketing. And I have a background in media advertising and in mobile. Yeah.
Cool. My name is Sebastian Veldman. I've been with Mobgen now for almost 5 years. So before the acquisition and after as well. And I'm leading the lab department of the company. So that basically entails a group of what we call creative technologists and product and service designers who work closely together both for client as research, focusing mainly on extending services, either existing services or new services to new types of interfaces. So from a phone towards a voice-controlled skill or a virtual reality headset, these are common practices that you'll see in our team happening. So, during the presentation, I would like to show you some examples we've done together with KLM, but also for some other clients that I think are applicable in the topic of AR and data visualization. I have to apologize for my voice. I had my bachelor party this weekend, so it wasn't... Still recovering a bit. They literally threw me out of an airplane, so yeah. But yeah, different topic.
So you screamed?
I did scream a bit, yeah.
Just a short introduction on Mobgen and on what we do. So we are in total with around 200 people, 100 from Amsterdam city center. We're in the Marnixstraat, and we have 2 offices, one in A Coruña and one in Malaga. And we focus on customer experience, UI UX design, digital and mobile development, system integration and analytics. So that's around, let's say, 200 people of our company. And next to that, Mobgen Lab was founded, I think, around 2.5, 3 years ago. And we're there with 20 people. So around 10 in Amsterdam and around 10 in our other Spanish offices. So that's a bit about Mobgen and what we do. And I think a very important element in everything we do. So yeah, we see ourselves as a design and an IT company. But we really focus on delivering the best human experiences. So we always take the end user, so either the customer or an employee, as the center point of all the work we do. Because technology is nice, new devices, new opportunities and innovations are nice, but we always look at what is the journey, where can it really help us or facilitate customers, employees, managers, staff, and see how we can help there. So let's say this piece of art, I don't know if you recognize this picture, because it's part of Pink Floyd.
10 points.
Very good. Yeah. So our creative director, it was the first how do you say, record he bought, and for him it was not only the music but the total experience of music, photos, the atmosphere. So for him it really presents human experiences. Yeah. And looking at our process, we always, because we take the end user as a starting point, we always, let's say, take 3 steps in our approach for development of all kind of technology. So we first look at the end user in our service design approach to really understand the steps he is taking in his journey, his struggles and challenges. And then we look at technology where it can help us. And we try to do that as much as possible in simple proof of concepts, rapid prototyping, as small as possible. And if it's then successful and tested, well, it's the same way I think a lot of you are also working in that way in the digital studio. We bring it to agile development in delivering and developing the bigger projects. So that's the three-step approach. Always taking the end user again as a starting point and really understanding him in his needs and his behavior. So that on our process, Sebastian, on MobGen Lab and what we do.
No, MobGen Lab specifically focuses on this middle pillar here. So we call it rapid prototyping, and it basically merges the knowledge that we gain from the field via our service designers who go to the hangar here and analyze how your mechanics are working, understand what problems they are facing when it comes to design and technology, and basically translate that into opportunities for us. Those opportunities come into the lab, and that's where we merge it with technology. So we try to understand there, okay, what's the best interface for this specific problem to be solved? Is that an existing interface with a new experience in it, or is it a different interface because the services that the user is trying to interact with don't really make sense anymore for a tablet, and it needs to go to something else because the person needs to have his hands available at all the time. So that's really the exercise we do in the middle, and we do it rapidly, meaning within 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, we try to already create something that can be validated with real people, right? So we give it back to the group, we validate it, we take knowledge from that validation, we move forward, we iterate again and again, all depending on the time, the project, the scope, and then until we reach a certain moment that we say like, okay, this is good, this qualifies as, for us as what we call a minimal viable product. And that minimal viable product goes to proper piloting, into the market for a certain period of time, and eventually to scalability, which sits on the right of this chart. And that's also, I think, where 60 to 70% of the company comes in, because that's where we talk about full end-to-end capability, where not only your data analysts and your engineers, but also your designers, a real team that helps you to keep your app alive, healthy, updated with the latest systems that it needs to have. So that's a bit the pillar, but today we'll be mainly zooming in here on the middle, specifically on the topic of data visualization and AR, because that is a big trend for us. We've done quite some projects in that area specifically. And what I basically have with me today is a couple of case studies that highlight the projects in detail, but more importantly how AR is being used to help people to better understand how to extract data from physical objects, for instance. If you have any questions during the presentation for me, I want to keep it quite open and casual, so feel free to raise your hand or so, and then happy to pause for a second.
Because understanding a bit the audience, are a lot of people from the studio, or what's the, let's say, what kind of groups do we have here from KLM?
Studio people, raise your hand.
Very good.
And from other parts of the company, from engine and maintenance or not?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay, roughly, okay.
Cool. So that's our user.
Yeah.
Mobile?
Yeah, IT dev, mobile.
Okay.
Cool.
Background services, finance.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
Good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way Accenture puts it, the topic AR, augmented reality, they put it under an umbrella called extended reality. And extended reality basically combines the three main buzzwords at the moment. That's AR, VR, and MR. Augmented, virtual, and mixed reality. They all relate to a certain interface and a certain interaction possibilities. Extended reality is the overall term that we maintain to keep it simple, let's say, in a way. Now, when we talk about extended reality and specifically AR, a lot of the practices we've seen over the last few years is a bit like exploratory, right? It's all new. People don't really know how to use it or apply it. So there's a lot of experimentation that has happened over the last few years when technology came into play, things became better, more affordable, and more companies are moving towards a direction that they really starting to understand, okay, how can we make this applicable for specific use cases or industries? So I think you know this guy, he's somewhere here in this audience. It's difficult to recognize you though in this picture. Yeah. But so the technology has matured enough both from a hardware perspective as a software perspective that we can say we can really think about how can we make this applicable in the right context, right? Is it in a hangar? Is it outside? And which interface itself would extend best to making that user's life easier by working with these new types of interfaces. Now the trends we're seeing in that area have been going to quite a leap, and it's still rapidly changing. The technology itself, AR, VR, MR, it's quite old. Specifically VR, I think we go back 30, 40 years in time already, when the first Robocop, Tron-like headsets were hitting the market, and you could experience a whole new world through by wearing this cyborg type of outfit. Now, if you look at 5 years ago, that rapidly changed, right? We were actually assembling our own kits, putting our phone in it, and before you know it, you have an immersive experience with the power that already sits in your pocket. So that's a radical shift in interface, in headsets, but also accessibility for people to interact with content like this. That makes it very interesting for us because, I mean, we are a mobile-driven company from day one, and this also makes a lot of these experiences come more into our playfield because the technology that sits behind it is something we have been working on for quite a while now. Now, if we really look into what is driving these type of developments, that is the engine that sits behind it. And the engine is not only the processing and graphical capability that your phone nowadays provides you with, but more importantly, the big players, Apple and Google, are giving people, third-party developers, the opportunity to create these experiences for your own using their software engines. That's called ARKit and ARCore. Is any of you familiar with these terms? Ever experienced or tried? I'm not including you, but ever heard of this? Yeah. So these are platforms that you can use by just going through the developer portal of Apple or Google, and then basically link it to an application that you're developing, allowing you to work in augmented reality. And that content then becomes back available on your phone, on your tablet, whatever is running on iOS or Android software, allowing you freely to use your camera and augment content in your proximity. Now this is really where the fun starts for us, of course, because this is where we can look at, okay, how can we basically take data infrastructures from clients, from stuff that we have, and relate it to a development kit like this, and make that information instead of two-dimensional, three-dimensional, using your phone or your tablet. To give you a simple example, when we started working on the developer program of ARKit from Apple, we built this use case that basically showed how powerful this technology has become. So I'm using my iPhone 7 here, which is already a 2-year-old device, if I'm correct. And what I'm doing here in this room is I'm blending two realities with each other. So I'm using my camera in the physical environment that I'm in, but at the same time I'm able to blend that environment with digital content. So an aircraft door with an environment behind it. Now by physically moving towards that door, you'll see that I can actually step into that new environment, completely immersing myself on a tropical island in this example. If I look around, sound changes, the visualizations have changed, and it's all being done by myself by physically just moving around in that domain. Now if I step back, I can exit that domain also. And then by exiting the domain, the sound changes again, the visualizations will be left behind, and I can close it again. So closing the door, I cannot access the environment again. It's a very easy way that shows how powerful the mobile has become to blending these two things together and allowing you to trigger them whenever you want. Now, taking it a step further.
This is an existing AirAsia commercial?
No, so this is something we've done on our own. So for us, it was really when Apple gave us access to the early developer program, we could basically start exploring how powerful is this development kit and how far can we push it. And at that moment, we just built an aircraft door and played with it. So we can put any logo on this. So that was not built or used for any specific product. It's a lot of fun, I can tell you. So. No, so taking it a step further, looking at other parties on how they are using this platform to really create new experiences. The following example that I'm going to show you takes us to the Apple Park in Silicon Valley, so the new Apple campus. And basically, I don't know if any of you had ever had the privilege to go there. Nobody? I would love to go there because what I'm going to show you, I think, is also a great example on how Apple is playing around with this specific domain. So when you enter the facility, you'll be given an iPad to basically explore the whole site. And that's basically being shown here in this example. So what you see is basically you hold an iPad on top of a physical object, so a model of the whole campus. And by putting that physical object on top of it, you can basically manipulate that object based on certain interaction possibilities. Think about time, understanding how the building operates during day, during night. Think about different assets like energy usage, airflow, so how is this building benefiting from airflows that are going through the campus. Or for instance, how all the solar panels on the building itself are generating energy by using solar generation during the day and applying it to lights or the campus itself during night. So you see here the solar being visualized, but at the same time also how the grid around the campus is benefiting from that power generation. So it becomes a very fun and interesting window that you put between you and the physical object and allowing you to see so much more than what the thing in front of you is allowing you to see. And base that on different scenarios, right? So we're just talking here about airflows and solar energy, but this can be anything that might be applicable to your physical object. It can be something about maintenance, can be something about training or operation specific. So it really allows people to take it a bit step further. Now Google also does something funny with this because they're also trying to show how you can blend digital and physical using augmented reality. What they've done there specifically is showing you how you can put your phone and use it as a digital overlay based on a physical robot that you've created and give it a whole new experience. So what you see here is the guy is creating some waypoints that basically instruct the robot to drive to specific points in your living room. But by looking through your phone, this becomes a road with an environment, with different elements around that environment that the robot physically will respond to. So whatever you do in AR, you can show it in real life because you see that thing actually going through the room, but at the same time by holding that window, that frame in front of it, you'll see a whole other experience than somebody physically would be seeing only at the robot. Who has heard of this project? Smartify. It's an app that you can download for free in the App Store and Google Play Store. I think what I really like about this specific project, how it's using the camera, at the moment still two-dimensionally, to extract information from physical objects that you're looking at. So Smartify is working with over 50 museums and galleries around the world. They basically disclose their artworks or sculptures through an API or an image batch that we extract from them. And then by doing so, Smartify can recognize these individual artworks and present back to the user information about the artwork, about the artist, perhaps about any specific exposition, include audio clips, video, whatever is relevant for that user to understand when looking at the real physical thing. I have a small movie about Smartify which I would like to show you to give you a good understanding how it works. Don't have sound in this? Well, what you see here is basically people using Smartify. It recognizes the artwork quite easily. I think you need about 20 to 30% of the actual artwork to be recognized. The moment it's recognized, information is being shown to you. More importantly, the more you scan, the more you build your own curation profile. And at the same time, by scanning, Smartify is starting to understand people's scanning behavior, right? And this is very interesting for galleries because they want to know where people are extracting information from and perhaps how that information could be again shown to a user. So imagine a scenario where we're scanning and we're getting a lot of data about specific expositions in the gallery or museum itself. That can be used as a recommendation to the user like, okay, we're seeing you're scanning a lot of Vincent van Gogh. Perhaps you should go to this museum or this exposition because it matches the style or type of artworks that you have scanned so far. So again, providing a very simple tweak, simply using your camera to extract information and make it applicable for you as a user. So if you're an art lover and you go to the Rijksmuseum every now and then, download Smartify and try it yourself because you'll see how easy it is to work with it.
People are already, it's a live product, right?
Yeah, it's a live product, yeah.
So I would say if you are an art lover and you know the painters and paintings, then you don't need extra information because you probably know more than the machine is going to tell you. So will it help in collecting and profiling person use already every day in the Rijksmuseum?
That is a good question for a specific person like that. I think it really depends also what type of information do you offer to that specific individual, right? So, I mean, we all can go to Wikipedia and find information about Van Gogh or so, but if you can actually present something to that user that has a relation to the artwork, the series of the artwork, or actually offers you something about the creation of the artwork, information that you cannot disclose out of public sources, that could be interesting. But also think of scenarios where we can think about replacing an audio tour, right? I mean, what a hassle is it to go to a museum, get these audio devices, which you have to pay for, which most of the time don't work, very old technology. You're having headphones with that piece. You have your phone in your other hand, probably. It's very redundant if you think of it on what your smartphone can do for you and why you're not leveraging that in that full capability. So yeah, it really depends, I guess. What do you disclose to the user, and how would that make sense towards what the user can also already extract on his own?
There was this app a few years ago, Layer.
Yeah.
What's the differences between those two, Layer and Smartify?
So Layer was actually was way more than well, it was an app, but it was way more than that because it was a platform that could be used by all types of third parties to use that platform to disclose information from recognizing images or artwork. Now, what you see with Layer, what happened is that technology, 6-7 years ago, came there, was very impressive, but the issue with it is hardware technology wasn't really ready for it. So I don't know if you ever tried a couple of Layer applications. I've tried quite some. And what happened in some of the cases was when you're scanning an artwork, your camera was either not recognizing it perfectly. When you had a good scan, it had to preload content, which could take sometimes ages depending on the content that was there. So in the end, a user is putting more effort into extracting information out of an object than by actually simply just putting that window in between and disclosing it. So I think Layer was a bit too early days there to make the service available. But also on the other hand, if you think of it, Layer was so many things. So it wasn't only scanning artwork. It was, you could I think you can analyze planes, where they were flying, and then you would disclose information about the type of aircraft, the route, and the destination. So there were so many possibilities for a person to use that platform, which also make it quite complicated because you really have to find that thing that you need to make Layer applicable to you instead of understanding what it is, which has a very specific and simple use case, and using it in your benefit in the right context. Technology is the same and not the same, actually. So software has evolved. I mean, that's a given, right? So recognition has improved. Cameras have improved from a hardware perspective, which allow you to basically play around with different types of information as well. So I would say it's more an evolution than just a radical change. But the evolution itself makes it applicable for people because it's just that easy nowadays. Yeah. So that's at least how I see it, having experienced both Layer and using this when I'm in the right at least. Right. Well, what I actually would like to do is move a bit more towards KLM and helping you to understand what we have been doing with KLM so far, which started last summer, but also what we're doing right now, which I think both of these things play a very important role in the topic that we're discussing at the moment. How much of you are familiar with the HoloLens track that we've done for engineering and maintenance end of last summer? I think it was...
Yeah, I think we finished somewhere in September.
September, huh? Yeah. Has any of you heard of this project? Some. So, yeah. Hey, you did, yeah, good. Well, what's the official title? HoloLens Engineering and Maintenance.
Yeah, I think that was it.
I think so, yeah. We didn't really had a... Yeah. So again, I have a video which will show you what it is and what we've done there. But more importantly, what I want to show to you is how technology played a role here again to help people like Dalen in this example, who was a key part of this project, to disclose information in a certain environment where normally this information would be presented to you in this form without any external sources, right? So I think the main challenge here was, well, maybe you would like to, I can say it, but Just to put you on the spot here. But
Yeah, no, sure. The main challenge for us was to find a way to use augmented reality in the hangar and create a way to visualize the information a mechanic needs in another way than just 2D drawings and using it on an iPad or using it on a desktop. So they would always have their hands on metal and don't have to work back and forward to their desk anymore. And just basically showing all the information using the HoloLens. And by using the HoloLens, we could also combine books because they use like 8 or 9 different books as a mechanic for maintenance instructions, parts catalog. And in this way, we combine 2 of the books just to make it a lot easier for mechanics to get their information.
yeah, and I think the video will speak for itself. But what you will see there is the difference between 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional object information really played a big role here.
In order to stimulate innovation and to experiment with new technologies, KLM Engineering and Maintenance are teaming up with the Digital Transformation Program with the goal to make life easier for our aircraft technicians. For this experiment, we're focusing on the removal and installation of a variable frequency starter generator, or VFSG, inside a Gen X engine. This process contains a lot of steps, and the mechanic has to refer to the manual frequently. Replacing specific parts and having to look up the part number in a different manual is also very time-consuming and prone to errors. To provide optimal visual support during multi-part aircraft maintenance, we started an experiment with the Microsoft HoloLens. The HoloLens adds an extra layer of information on top of the actual surroundings. This is known as augmented reality. For this experiment, we created a 3-dimensional model of the VFSG. The mechanic has full control over the model. For example, he can rotate the model, make it show all the parts he's working on, or check the next step in the process of replacement. The lightweight HoloLens headset allows the mechanic maximum mobility between checking the next step in the replacement process and physically working on the engine. He can keep 2 hands on the metal, drastically reducing the time he spends looking at a manual. We tested a process where the mechanic looked for 3 different part numbers. Without visual support, it took 45 minutes, but working with the HoloLens, it took less than 3 minutes, significantly improving the employee's satisfaction and efficiency.
So the key, what I was saying at the start of the video there, was basically transforming 2-dimensional information towards 3-dimensional information, which means basically working from a specific schematic, which has a fixed perspective on a physical object that you're looking at, and basically translating that to 3-dimensional objects so that you can actually manipulate that object as you're seeing it in the real thing, helped Dalen and people we tested it in the hangar itself to become so much more efficient and faster by recognizing that object or localizing specific information that we're trying to extract. Because, I mean, this is complex. I don't have to explain it all, but this is complex piece of machinery, and using visual information can really help you to understand: am I looking at the right thing, and am I actually taking out that specific component from this object that gives me that information to order a new part, or understanding how one another are connected to each other. So that visual, I think, change was the thing that helped a lot of people to understand how this could be applicable, right? Yeah. So knowing that, HoloLens has also some dependencies, right? HoloLens, very expensive piece of equipment. It's still in its first stage, so means it's already 3 years on the market. It's not accessible for everyone, and the way you interact with it is a new thing, right? So you're wearing a headset, you have 2 hands available. I don't know if any of you ever tried a HoloLens, but you can work with gestures, so basically putting your hands in the air and interact with holograms or using your voice. But that basically, leap to start understanding how you can work well with it is quite challenging for some people. So what we're doing now is basically looking at all the knowledge that we gained from that specific project and making it applicable to technology that you already have in your pocket, right? So, or in your pocket, we're talking tablets here, so it's not literally in your pocket, but technology that you're used to interact with, technology that is either already present in the hangar itself, so iPads in this example, and using again ARKit in this specific example, to augment that content while you're looking at that specific physical object. Now the cool thing about this project is that we're taking it one step further than what we've done with the HoloLens, because technology nowadays, and I think this is also a very interesting development, is able to recognize what it's looking at, so it's able to learn by pointing your camera at something on what it is, and once it extracts the shape or information of that specific component, relate it to the information that matters while you look at it. So, very simple use case that we're testing is basically pointing it at the same type of machinery, or VSFG, right? So still. And then by looking at the VSFG, I think you had a 3D printed, or yeah, you dropped it there.
I don't know where it is. We have a video.
Oh, cool. Okay. So, and by looking at the real thing, the app itself will learn to understand in which parts it can position specific content to help you to see, okay, what are type of, I think, manipulations or operations that
Yeah, so the maintenance instructions, the parts catalog, and one of the things from feedback from the mechanics with in the HoloLens project.
Cheers. Yeah.
Was the torque value, because
Positive.
it still takes a lot of time to look for the torque value, and basically that's the most important thing you're doing when you're doing aircraft maintenance. What you use the most from the maintenance manuals is the torque value, so just basically pointing your device at a component and selecting the torque value. That will just save a lot of time and make it a lot more clear which torque value you need to use for which component.
Yeah.
Just the value, how tight you need to.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this project just started, so I cannot really show you video on how far we are at the moment, but I think this video shows a good example, if it works for me. Yeah. On the technology itself. So here, a mini motorcycle. Pointing the app towards it, it recognizes different parts of the motorcycle, mirrors, seats. By selecting specific parts, it's able to extract engine groups or whatever technical information you need out of the physical thing. So it sticks the three-dimensional information on top of the physical thing, and then by doing so you can extract mechanical information, operation insights that the person needs to better understand, okay, how do I assemble this, or how can I specifically use my machinery that I have with the right settings to fix it or make it loose. So there's all types of information there that can help people to better understand by just putting, a digital layer in between you and the physical object, and supporting you with visual information like three-dimensional objects that we've shown here. So this is ongoing. I think we'll finish in the next month, somewhere.
Yeah, we just started the first week, so
yeah.
3 more weeks.
So in 4 weeks we hope to have a prototype ready, and I guess at one certain moment that will also be presented here back in the studio. That's my story in the main line. I'm very curious if there are any questions on any specific use cases or trends that I just shared within this group.
Are you also going to leverage the new technology from ARKit with Smartify? Also getting the position of the recognized piece of art. So not just showing information, but also making it more interactive on the piece of art itself.
Yeah, I cannot disclose the details there, but we are at this moment doing a rapid prototyping track for Smartify, where we are exploring integration with ARKit, but also more importantly, building our own image recognition software. Because in the end of the day, using something like Vivoria, when an app like Smartify, which is now used across the world, becomes quite expensive to manage. So we're actually looking into both leveraging ARKit more, different types of informations, but also building the recognition software ourselves, just because the scalability that Smartify is operating nowadays.
curious, the use of the HoloLens,
Mhm.
is there any sense of disorientation using that? Like I've used just VR glasses,
Yeah.
and I find them very disorienting.
Yeah.
Do you have the same sensation with AR?
It's quite different, and that really has to do because you're able to blend realities instead of being submerged into a whole different reality. And the reason why you had that feeling, most likely it has to do with the frame rate or latency in those immersive realities. Back in the days, especially 4 or 5 years ago, if you would conduct a physical movement in VR and then digitally you would see that movement happening in the environment that you're in, there would be a delay in it, and basically your brain freaks out the moment that happens because you're doing something but you're not seeing it directly. Using AR, you're actually able to understand and see where you are at that given moment. So wearing the HoloLens, Dalen is perfectly able to walk under the engine, pick up any piece of machinery, but at the same time consult three-dimensional objects if that would be of help for him. So yeah, it's a different experience.
I think new versions of HoloLens and successors are being planned for in 1.5, 2 years time.
Yeah, I mean it's all assumptions, but the HoloLens is now already in market for I think 3 years, which is quite some time. There are talks that the new version is going to go end of this year, I think at least an announcement, and then next year most likely shipment. But more importantly, there are different parties that are coming to this field. So you see a startup from Florida called Magic Leap, trying to get a piece of the market as well. And that really shows that companies, big hardware vendors are trying to step in and get users using their platform, both hardware and software wise.
Now looking at development for mobile, of course Google and Apple are the biggest players around,
Mhm.
making it often platform dependent. So would you also expect it to be more independent platforms, or how do you see the future?
Yeah, so I think very good question. So the technology that we work nowadays with is actually not specifically related to AR, iOS or Android. We're using a technology called Unity, and Unity is a platform that allows me to either export an experience to Android or iOS using that same code base with maybe some minor tweaks. So in that way, using Unity in this example really helps us to rapidly scale an experience on Android or iOS or any other type of software platform that might become applicable in the future. Yeah, so it's good that it's there, because otherwise, indeed, you would be doing things double with double the amount of people. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? Cool. Then I would say that's it from my side. I have the prototype of Gasunie here, so if you're interested, come over and I'll show it to you. And also the aircraft door I have here, so if you really want to see it yourself, please do come to me, and I'll be happy to give you a demo.
I wonder, did we meet all expectations? Because in the announcements and data visualization,
Mm-hmm.
I see some people from, I think you were interested in data.
Yeah,
Was this what you expected?
no, but I think no.
What did you expect?
Well, I'm here for data visualization, so the financial data, and visualize it so you can see where your focus needs to be on, or what are the exceptions that you can steer your operations on. So, but furthermore, I haven't read what was going to be shown. I think there was going to be shown some augmented reality. I was aware of that, but yeah, that's it.
And do you have any examples or use cases that you're experimenting yourself using augmented reality and data visualization in that specific context?
I think augmented reality in finance is quite difficult because it's
Yeah.
probably focus more on operational usage, or maybe I can visualize the mood of my manager and see if it's a good to ask for a raise. But furthermore,
Yeah.
not. But I'm working on a data visualization dashboard for equipment to see which ones are heavy in maintenance need, or which are high cost and which we can replace, or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I'm I'm always interested in digitalization and that kind of stuff.
So So maybe I'm quite interested to hear from the group as well. Data visualization for you, what does it mean? Right, so because data comes in very different types of ways and forms. So you're giving a very specific example of financial dashboarding. Is there anyone in this group that out of the examples that I shared with you are basically questioning, for instance, the data that I deal with on a daily basis? How possibly could it be translated to AR or?
Maybe it's a bit comparable because I think I'm a bit stranger here because I work in revenue management.
Yeah.
So we work with a lot of data, so a lot of tables and graphs, etc. So we do have tools that actually created using an interface or tool, and you select a filter, drag and drop, for example. So it shows you graphs, stapeldiagram, bar graphs,
Yeah,
also curves, etc. So there could be a link there where you can start using augmented reality by choosing specific data in a data warehouse that will show you actually. I could think of something like that. So that was partially a bit my expectation maybe, which is still very nice though.
No, I find it interesting to hear. I mean, we really think, as Michiel said, about the user, the person. So, and then the examples, I think what I try to show you is, okay, that person has a phone or this person has access to a tablet, and how can you make that specific interface applicable by disclosing certain data at that given context. So I'm very curious to hear from you, all of you who had an idea about data visualization. In what context is it, right? So what type of technology or interface you're using to interact with that data, and how possibly augmented reality, for instance, could be of help there. So I don't know, are there any other examples? Finance, revenue. So that's all, I think, desktop-based, I presume. Anyone else?
I remember we did a study, I think it was the DMI, so the Duty Manager ICT. I think we are in a room with many screens. If we could visualize that on, was it HoloLens, I think? Yeah. Visual on HoloLens. So instead of you having all these screens, so simply put on your HoloLens and you have the same, or even better, more advanced information, way to show information.
But have a more physical representation of the data center, not just the screens itself, I think was the goal.
Yeah, they started the project, but what they had now is that if you put on the HoloLens, you could see some balls, some rounds, and they're green or red. And if they're red, you can press on it, and some information is popping up. But I think it's just static, so it's not interacting with any data source or something. So now they have all those screens with different kind of dashboard environments and data sources. But I have no idea if somebody is still working on that.
Okay.
I think that basically that and the financial stuff is not that far apart from each other, because it's basically you have a list of CPU usage, or you have a list of when stuff is sold. Like you have an object, and per 5 minutes you know how much of a certain object is sold. It's a very comparable matrices or Excel sheets types of information that there exists a lot of. And what would be nice if you could connect, see patterns in it, one way or the other, and you could connect dots to each other or properties to other dots. Like something goes very slow, and I'm more on the operations side and on the financial side, so I'll take my example from that. But you have a red dot because something goes very slow. It would be nice if you could then connect that to network behavior, or nothing is the matter in the network. So you could investigate that, but on an object basis could connect things that might have anything to do with each other. And that makes it easier, probably, to peruse what information is hidden in the data you have, because that's in the end what you want.
I think in the end,
It's like building relationships between different data.
Your data needs to be
I think that's a possibility.
correct, correlated. I think really the different blends I showed you of using AR and disclosing certain information, using this combination of two factors, right, is really understanding like, okay, what's the problem you're trying to solve here? we're trying to solve a problem with Dalen now that helps mechanics by looking at something to understand how they should do the job, right? How they should do the job on a very detailed level, meaning configuring settings of machinery or equipment that they have laying next to them, which in the past they had to go, I don't know, to a brochure or call a guy to say, hey, which setting do I need to put in order to make sure that I don't destroy the bolt that I'm trying to take out. Looking into the example of Ghassuni, it's about understanding the invisible that's not there, because it's under the ground, and making it three-dimensional available to you yourself. So I think it's the question really sits like, what's the data you work with, and how could three-dimensional data or your physical environment around you help you to use technology, phones, tablets, to make that available to you. That's for me, I think, the key of combining data and AR into these platforms. So.
I have one question. Does AR have any pitfalls in terms of privacy of the data? Because the data is now also for maintenance, for instance. It can be a big issue for the knowledge of somebody working at an actual plane and the guidelines provided that you're making an additional medium between the guidelines and actual maintenance guide.
Yeah, very good question. And I think that really comes down on defining like who's the user that's gonna, if let's say in the case of a mechanic crew, there would be certain level of mechanics that can have access to certain level of data sets. Yeah. It's really about understanding, making sure that you understand who is using it, and making sure you provide the right user management settings to make sure that that person is only available to disclose torque values versus the other one who is available to load up schematics, 3D animations of the engine, the block itself. So I think there's a lot of playing there on when you build a platform like it to understand like who's going to use it, and then how do we provide rights to certain people who need to have access to the full suite of data versus people who just need to read out or consult any, let's say, high-level data that might be applicable on the go. Yeah, but there's definitely, that really is up to you how you design your system.
I think the biggest challenge now in this project is the availability of the data itself on the aircraft. So Boeing, of course, has all the data available. They're not really sharing, let's say, the digital assets. So in this example, we built our own 3D model. Well, it's a very small part of machinery, so you can't do that for the whole plane. So I think the future in this is a combination in the supplier together with the aircraft company to work together on a solution hand in hand. So I think the challenge here is not that much on the privacy and allowances side, but more on the data of all the drawings, everything there. Yeah. IP. Yeah.
That as well. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think since you're using data from external sources like a Boeing or maybe other vendors that help you to do your job on a daily basis, it's a development and change for a lot of parties, right? Where you used to only provide, let's say, physical material. Now a whole new business model might pop up where you're saying like, well, actually, you're using our physical material, but why not consult our API as well, because the API will help you to access the whole 3D model data sets that we have available, and you can export it to a HoloLens, an AR kit or an AR core in any way that it might suit or support your operations. So in that way, I think that's also some of the things we saw a year ago. There's change and development for many parties in this field.
That's the reason why should Boeing not just sell the tool? Because they've got all the assets. Just let you put now in tool and play with it.
Yeah. So sorry, you mean the
So why is Boeing not selling something like that?
I don't know.
They've got all the assets. It's much easier for them.
It's a good question. I couldn't say, unfortunately. But for me, I think it is moving into a direction where a party like Boeing should think about not only providing physical objects, but also thinking about digitally how they can support a successful operation or jobs at KLM. Definitely. Yeah.
It would save me a lot of work. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot for your attention. I'm sorry if some of the cases didn't really relate to your expectation, but do, like I said, come to me. I'll be happy to take you into more detail on specific cases or have a discussion with you how data and possibly AR is applicable in your field.
Specifically then on data visualization, let's come back to you, because I think also not only within MobGen but also within Accenture there are a lot of examples there. So let's get back to you on this specific topic, because we agree with you, we didn't answer that question.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, after the presentation. Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Sebastian, thank you very much
No worries.
for the presentation.
Thank you.
We have a nice digital studio key hanger.
Yes.
But everybody who wants one can have one. So if you want one, please go to Anna Paula. For you.
Very good. Very
And
cool.
we have a nice
Right.
for you.
Very good.
You as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.